Verben mit Dativ und Accusativ. So verbs with dative and accusative. In today's video, which is part 5 out of my series about verbs with complements, I will show you some verbs that actually require you to use dative and accusative. So when you actually have to finally apply the rule direct and indirect object, because in normal sentences, you barely have to apply this rule. Yes, there's always another rule in place. And today I will show you which other rule that is. And very important, I will also show you the word order, because if it comes to several cases in a row, you have to apply a special word order, because you cannot just mix everything up. Hi, my name is Jan and I'm your German teacher here on EasyDeutsch, your YouTube channel for German grammar. Today's topic is Verben mit Dativ und Accusativ. And with the help of my ebook, I will show you now everything you have to know. So let's switch into my ebook. So we're here now in my ebook, German Grammar Explained Easily. Today's topic is verbs with dative and accusative, as well as word order with the cases. So let's have a look here. Let's jump right there from my table of content. It's one of the last topics. That's why it takes a little bit longer here. There we go. So usually you know already all verbs, or almost all the time, they use a nominative complement. So this is just the default way, so they use this as well. But some of them, on top of that, use a dative complement or an accusative complement. And some, very few ones, even use both of them. So the most common example that you have seen for sure already is geben, to give. And if you have a dative and an accusative complement, then the rule applies with dative is the receiver of the action, aka indirect object, and the accusative is the object that is used for the action. So the direct object. Usually that's a thing, but it can be a person as well. So here, for example, der Mann gibt dem Kind den Ball. So the man is the acting person, which means the man is the subject, so it's nominative case. The child receives something, the ball. So the receiver is dative. It's the indirect object. That's why we use dem Kind. Neutral, das Kind, and in dative, it's dem. And the ball is the direct object, and because it's the one that we're using to actually perform the action, so we give the ball. So the ball is used to perform the action. So accusative, den Ball. So what I want to highlight again, if you've watched my other videos, you've heard that already. That only applies if there's no preposition. Whenever you have a preposition in front, the preposition rules. The preposition always overrules any other rule. That's why if your teacher only tells you dative is the indirect object and accusative is the direct object, that is true, but that's less than 10% of all sentences you will have it like this. Usually you have a preposition and it covers way over 50% of all cases that are not nominative, where the preposition will actually tell you the rule. So that's why it's very important that you know which preposition use which case. If you're not so sure about prepositions yet, I have an entire playlist about prepositions, which I will link right now for you in the info cards. And let's have a look at the second example here. Schicken, to send something, is also a verb that requires you accusative and dative. Schickt seinem Bruder das Geschenk per Post. So he sends his brother the present via mail. So er is the acting person, so subject, so nominative. The brother is receiving something, so dative, because it's the indirect object. And what is he receiving? The present, so that's the direct object, Accusative. And per Post is a so-called adjunct, in German Angabe. So that's just an additional information that we could actually drop. It's just good to know, but we don't really need that here for this sentence to make sense. But for example, we cannot drop Geschenk or brother. Brother may be if it's obvious to whom he's sending it, or we don't know to whom he's sending the present, but we definitely can never ever drop the present, because chicken requires we have to send something. So, and if we see this, we know there is something. We can only know that somebody's sending something if we see this something. So that's why this is absolutely impossible to drop. But if we don't know who he is sending it to, we could drop this, but this is definitely at all times just additional information. Another one that you've seen already, or that you know already, is schreiben. Hat mir eine E-Mail geschrieben. So he has written an email to me. Again, if we don't know who he's sending the email to, or if it's just obvious, we can drop this here. But those are the only ways where you actually have to apply this direct and indirect object. That's what's the message here. Only if you have this kind of structure and there's absolutely no preposition, only then you ask for direct and indirect object. The moment there is a preposition, nobody cares about direct or indirect object. If you in general still have problems with the cases, please check out my playlist about the cases, because I have videos explaining nominative, dative, and all the other cases right in detail. I will link that in the info cards for you right now. Where we have to pay attention to here is the word order. This is a very important part here, the word order within the cases. Usually you have this word order here. So, der Mann gibt seiner Tochter das Buch. You can actually turn those two around. So you can also say, der Mann gibt das Buch seiner Tochter. You can also put everything in the first position if you really want to. So this is 100% flexible, but this sounds the most natural. So this order is usually what most native speakers would choose by default, unless they want to highlight the book or the daughter in some particular way. Then you might put this in first position. But I recommend you to do this. But where you have to pay attention to is if you use pronouns. So pronouns are the ones that are replacing the nouns. If you don't know what a pronoun is, I will link the video about pronouns in the info cards here for you. Nouns are everything that's written with a capital letter in German, so everything that's a thing, person, as a very simplified version. So here we have, for example, der Mann gibt ihr das Buch, or der Mann gibt es seiner Tochter. Here, ihr replaces seine Tochter and es replaces das Buch. And you can see here, if we use a pronoun, the pronoun is in front of the noun. So you have the subject here, then the verb, then the pronoun, and then the noun. And if you have both as a noun, then usually accusative first. So this is different from two nouns, usually dative first. Both pronouns, usually accusative first. That's no 100% rule, so you can do this the other way around too. It's not grammatically wrong, but it may sound a little bit confusing to native speakers. You have two pronouns in here. It already makes it harder to understand because you replace two things. And like I said, in theory, you can also put this on position 1, but that makes it even more confusing. So you should technically, I recommend you to put accusative or dative only in position 1, if not everything is pronouns here, because then it will be completely confusing what you're talking about. So you should at least have one noun in there, preferred the subject. It can be done that you put something else here in front, or just all with everything with nouns, then it's fine in whatever order. But remember, subject, nominative before the other cases. So the subject wants to stay close here to the verb in case you put something else there. So in theory, you can put all of this in the first position, but I highly disencourage you to do so if the accusative or dative is a pronoun, because it gets super confusing what you're actually talking about. So do it if it's a noun, if you really want to highlight it, but if it's a pronoun, stick to this. Put the nominative in the first position, followed by the verb, and then followed by the pronouns in this order or in the other one around, but this is the native speaker order. But it's not wrong if you would say, der Mann gibt ihr es. It just may be a little harder to understand because usually you put accusative in front of dative.